Hello. Pardon the slight delay in getting started. Working out some technical stuff. And if you notice, the studio is a little bit different as we've been rearranging things and getting kind of acclimated to doing produced videos that have the animations, the long form, short form. I'm really excited about that. So be on the lookout for the next long form that's coming soon. But in the meantime, we're going to be talking about the circle of fifths and how it's used in songwriting. You know, the circle of fifths is super powerful. We talk about it here quite a bit. It's often relegated to the footnotes for a lot of people in terms of making music, where they think of the circle of fifths as a ring of key signatures, this esoteric ring of symbols that in traditional notation looks super complicated. But in reality, the circle of fifths is not only simple to understand once you understand how it works, but it's actually really powerful. It's more than just this kind of arcane academic reference to the way keys are related, as it's depicted in traditional notation as a ring of key signatures. It's actually like really cool. Like it helps guide you in the art of songwriting. So we're going to look at some sample songs, some examples across the decades from a variety of different songwriters and artists to see how they all use the same central shared language, which is the circle of fifths, in guiding them in the chord progressions they write. So our first example is a song called 1979 by the Smashing Pumpkins, which is a great song, actually. And so we're going to play the progression in each of these, but not just learn the progression, because you can find this on Ultimate Guitar. You can find not as cleanly depicted here with like the actual chords and the theory that's at play here. But we're going to go a step further to really dissect this progression and make sense of it, to understand not only the key, but also the mode, to really understand how Billy Corgan, who wrote this song, injected the vibe and the mood into this song with his choice of chords. And his choice of chords was not random at all. It's actually very intentional and very effective, because this song is awesome, in my opinion. This song is from 1995, but it's the song 1979. So let's play the progression, and then let's make sense of the key, and we'll use a couple of tricks to get a feel for what is the tonic, and from there, from that little bit of information what the tonic is, everything else unfolds. Okay, so it's I'm just going to play the first kind of bit here, but it's ever. Okay, so the chord progression is basically E flat major, and I'm just playing it in this inversion up here in an A shape of E flat major, and then it goes to A flat major, and then E flat major, and then at the end of the progression, the last two rows there are an F minor and then a B flat major, and the chord progression begins on and cycles through, keeps repeating this E flat chord. Now, one way to kind of check or gauge what the mode is, or the oh, that's interesting. There we go. One way to kind of gauge what the key is to find the tonic, is to find the chord that sounds the most resolute. So if you were to play the progression at any point in time, if you were to just stop, like press stop on the CD player, if you first got this album when it was on CD, or just press pause on your device, which chord would sound like it had some resolution? Okay, so if I'm going to play E flat major, and then I'm going to go to A flat major. I'm going to end on A flat major. It doesn't sound like it's done. If I come back to E flat major, ooh, it sounds like if I ended on that, it would sound like it was complete. But let's just play the other chords and see. That doesn't sound complete. Ooh, that sounds like it's leading to some form of completion. And in a recent live stream, we talked about how that, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. This chord naturally leads to this chord. So this E flat major chord is the tonic, okay? So if this E flat major chord is the tonic and it's a major chord, that means, and we're going to get to the circle of fifths here to really speed up this process of identification. But if we say that E flat major chord is the 1, then we can just go through. I'm just going to find every single E flat major chord and just label it as a Roman numeral 1. It's like filling in the puzzle. And we know from the circle of fifths what the relationship of A flat major is to E flat. But instead of just referring to these chord diagrams, I'm going to actually pull up the chord map here. And here it is. Pull it up here. And okay, so we're going to find, right now it's focused on the key of C, where C major is the 1, but we want to get to E flat as the 1. So we're going to rotate the grouping over here. And this grouping, I'm not sure which mode it is, okay? So let's just get it out of the way right now, because we're just going to focus on the chords, and then we'll identify the group, or that is the mode, based on a little more insight, okay? So this E flat major chord is the major 1. And if we just look at the other chords in the song, the other chords in the song in this progression are an A flat major. So right now, we already know that's a major 4. B flat major is a 5, major 5 chord. And then the F minor chord, this F minor chord is a minor 2. So these chords, if we're going to take the grouping, and if we try to group these together, we're cutting off 2 of the chords. If we try to group those chords together, we're cutting off 1 of the chords. So we're going to fit them all within our modal window here. And all of the chords in this progression now fit within this grouping, and it's pointing to Ionian. Ionian is just a fancy name for a major key. So in other words, this is E flat major, or E flat Ionian, because we have a 1, a 4, a 5, and a minor 2. So basically, this chord progression is E flat major to A flat major, or a 1 to a 4, 1, 4, and then it goes 2, 5, back to 1. Now, the production of the song, it's really cool. If you don't know this song, definitely check it out. If you don't know this song, you're missing out. It has a really great drum track. The production is really cool. It's got, awesome guitars on it. It's really cool. The bass line's simple, as always, but it's perfect for a Smashing Pumpkins song. And the reason this song has that kind of buoyant, nostalgic, but happy and lighthearted vibe, as it does, the lyrics definitely expound upon that feeling, but the chord progression is right there with the lyrics. The chord progression, being Ionian, or major key, is really reinforcing that happy vibe. I mean, you really can't go wrong with a 1, a 4, and then this 5, and also this minor 2. Okay, so if we come back to our chord progression, we can see that we can fill in these other chords. We have a 4, a 4. So every time the A flat shows up, in this case, it is a major 4. So it's an uppercase Roman numeral 4. We have a minor 2. This F minor is a minor 2. And then the B flat is a 5. So you can see that the only minor chord is this F minor. Everything else is just the 1, 4, 5, which is why this song sounds so immediately satisfying and consonant and just oh, that sounds great. So 1979, Smashing Pumpkins is not all Smashing Pumpkins songs are in a major key. You've got a lot of minor keys in some Smashing Pumpkins songs, and that's for another time. But this song, 1979, Ionian. So E flat Ionian, which is an interesting choice. And this diagram, I'm going to have all these diagrams in the post, the heads up post in the locals library, so that you can just play through them and soak them in at your own pace. So that's that song. And Ionian is a really popular choice for a lot of songwriters because it sounds so immediately good. We're going to look at another song by Lynyrd Skynard, or what some call Skinny Lizard, and it's from 1974. Now, we have 3 chords, and even just with the colors for the chords, you kind of have a sense, you already have a sneak peek at how the chords are related, because orange D, red C, and red orange G are all closely related. So if you're familiar with the chord map with the circle of fifths, you know, okay, these chords are definitely harmonically related. They're visually related. But let's kind of pick it apart and see, because this song kind of throws a little bit of a curveball. It seems maybe more obvious than it is at first glance. So let's see. It's I can never remember the lyrics, so I'm just going to kind of do some scat singing. Wheels keep on turning. It's the same chord progression, and it's very monotonous in that it really cycles through and it's hypnotic. Monotonous is the negative version of it's hypnotic. It's really satisfying. There's obviously a great guitar solo over this, and it sounds awesome. So what's up with this chord progression? And let's identify the tonic first by doing our little trick of let's just stop the tape, or let's lift the needle off the record in this case, because it's 1974, and see which chord sounds like it is final resting place for this progression. So it's I'm going to play it a couple times, just kind of get the loop going, and then I'm going to stop. So G, so D. Let's stop on C. I mean, you could have the song end like that, but it sounds almost like, ooh, unexpected. So if it's unexpected, it means that it's not really the tonic, because you expect the tonic. Your ears are wanting to resolve to the tonic. So C is not the tonic here. So let's keep going. So D, C, G. We'll stop on G next. So D, C, G. You could maybe say that's G, but let's try it again, ending on D. Next D. Arguably, that D sounds the most satisfying. Now, this is not always the case, but often the tonic is kind of the start of a chord progression. So notice how D has this prominent spot at the start of each cycle. And so that's not necessarily an indicator that it's the tonic, but it is in this case, because it also is the point of resolution. You know, you could end the song like that, and D sounds really nice. So treating D as the tonic, you've got some interesting stuff going on here. So in this case, I'm gonna, and it's a major chord, so I'm gonna label it as a Roman numeral 1. Roman numeral 1 for D. So every D is just going to be an uppercase I, or Roman numeral 1, meaning it's the tonic, it's the 1, but it's a major chord, so it's a Roman numeral. That's the naming convention here. And let's look at the circle of fifths. And in this example, we have, we're in the key of D. So we're going to have to go way over here, because our last song, Billy Corgan, was having us hang out in this range. But we've got Lynyrd Skynyrd over here, way over here in D. Now I'm going to move the mode grouping out of the way again, just to kind of get a sense. Because D is the 1, D shows up in multiple modes. It could be Lydian, could be Ionian, and it could be Mixolydian. So let's see, based on the other chords, what mode we really are dealing with here. And the first chord, like I say, is D. We also have a C and a G. So you could tell just from the chords in the chord progression that they had similar looking colors, harmonically related colors, because they are neighbors in the circle of fifths. So let's take our grouping and group around the C, the G, and the D, and we have D is the tonic, but now it's pointing to Mixolydian, which sounds a little more exotic. It's not Ionian. A lot of times people think, oh, if it's a major key or a major mode where the one is or the tonic is a major chord, that it's going to be Ionian. That's not necessarily the case. And in this example, it's actually Mixolydian. So what we have is a 1, flat 7, 4, and it just cycles back through those chords over and over again. So 1, flat 7, 4. They're all major chords. So with them being major chords, it does have a consonant kind of upbeat sound. And Mixolydian has a generally upbeat sound. So a major 1 to a flat major 7 to a 4. D, C to the G chord. Major 1 to flat major 7 to 4. Now, the funny thing about the language of music, just saying, major 1 to a flat major 7, if you don't know about where these Roman numeral labels come from, it's like, what the hell is a flat major 7? It's a mouthful. It seems counterintuitive. You never have, when you're talking numbers like in traditional math, you have a 7, but you generally don't work with Roman numerals. And what's this flat symbol? It has to do with the naming conventions in music and really just the intervals in music, because all chord names and all scale degrees in music are based on a major key. And so notice how none of the chords in D major have a flat or a sharp. They're all just like clean, as it were, in that there's no accidental symbol, sharp or flat. But once we deviate from the central kind of measure of all things mode of Ionian or a major key, we get into Mixolydian. I mean, the name does sound a little more exotic, but what's more exotic is that we have a flat major 7 chord, and that flat major 7 chord is prominent in Sweet Home Alabama, and really gives it, and that flat major 7 chord is a distinctive chord in the Mixolydian mode. I'm going to be talking a lot more about modes coming up. Modes is kind of the focus of lesson 18 in the course. Lesson 16 is the next lesson that's going to be dropping here in early August. But modes are a beautiful thing, and modes are a really awesome tool that songwriters use to add flavor and change the mood of the song. So adding our labels here, we have a 1. All of the C's are a flat major 7, so I'm just going to add a flat major 7 to that. And it's like X-ray vision, where you're getting inside the head of these songwriters to make sense of why they're using the chords that they're using. All the G chords are major 4. It's supposed to be a B in all of those. And it's major 4. So we're going from a 1 to a flat major 7 to a 4. There's no 5 in this chord. The dominant 5, which is a prominent chord in major keys. A 5 showed up in Billy Corgan's 1979, but there's no 5 chord in this. So it almost has like it just kind of keeps rolling, like those big wheels keep on turning, as the lyrics say. And so it's another instance of the lyrics capturing the mood of, in this case, the mode of Mixolydian. So like I say, all of these diagrams are in the post that you can play through, and it's clean Roman numerals that are legible rather than what I scribbled up above. So let's look at our next example. So far we have 2 different modes. We've got Ionian and Mixolydian. They're both major modes. Major modes meaning that the tonic is a major 1. We're going to play another song now by Coldplay. When did the song come out? Does anyone know when Clocks was released? It's a good one. This is a song written by Chris Martin and friends. And let's play through the chord progression and see if you can get a feel for, one, what the key is. We're going to start with the key, then we're going to dive into the mode. And again, just looking, oh, here it is. This is what I'm looking at, and we can all look at it once I share the screen. You can see that these chords, just on the face of it, are harmonically related, right? You have, in this case, blue, purple, purple, and purple red chords, which are E flat, it's E flat major, B flat minor, and we have also an F minor chord. So we've got a couple of minor chords, one major chord, and as is the case with some of the more common chord progressions in recent years, the song was released in 2003, that is, and it's got a similar loop. Now, we just played Lynyrd Skynyrd's song from 1974, which was just a repetitive loop, which was starting to become a thing, actually, in the mid-'70s. But by 2003, when Coldplay released Clocks, you have just a tight loop is a pretty standard thing, like we talked about in a recent stream here. But let's play the song, and it's, let's see, it's a B flat minor, so it's, cycling through those chords. Okay, so our trick of let's press pause midway and see on each chord and see if it sounds resolute. So E flat major to B flat minor. B flat minor doesn't really sound like it's the tonic because it wants to go somewhere. It's not really landing on that and feeling like home. So let's start again. So E flat major, E flat minor, E flat minor to F minor. That definitely doesn't sound resolute. So the other option would be that E flat major chord, which really does sound like home. So kind of like the song 1979, this chord, which my screen went blank, so let me pull that up again. This chord progression is founded on an E flat major chord, just like the Smashing Pumpkins song. But the chords are a little bit different. Whereas in 1979 we had a B flat major chord, this is a B flat minor chord in the Clock song. We also had an F minor chord in 1979, so it's similar. But let's get a feel for what's going on. So in this case, E flat is the major chord, is the tonic, I mean. And that's what happened is I changed my transparency. Let me try. Will that work? There we go. I'll use that. So a major 1 right there, and then with B flat, we already know from 1979 that's a minor 2, and a B flat minor chord. Let's look at the circle of fifths. So Lynyrd Skynyrd brought us over to the range of D. We're going to go back to where Billy Corgan was, over to E flat again. And we're going to move the mode out of the way, mode grouping, so we can just identify the chords, and then we'll fine tune it. We'll kind of take our lens and focus it to really make sense of the chord progression in the mode. But the key we know is E flat major because that E flat major is the tonic. So we've aligned it properly. But do we know if we're in Lydian, Mixolydian, or Ionian or Mixolydian based on the other chords? So let's rotate it over, and we have an F minor chord, an E flat major chord, but it's a B flat minor chord. So we're going to group that over. We're going to move the grouping over. And now the 3 chords in our song are pointing to Mixolydian. So it's kind of like, it's kind of a blend between the first 2 songs that we looked at, where 1979 was in the key of E flat and Sweet Home Alabama was in Mixolydian. This is in E flat Mixolydian. because we have those 3 chords: major 1, a minor 2, and a minor 5. So that's partly why this song has kind of its dreamy quality, because Mixolydian is a little more pensive and a little more tense than Ionian. So we're going to talk about the modal spectrum and different modes in more detail, but let's get a feel for looking at these chords again. So major 1 to a minor 5, so major 1 to minor 5 to minor 2. Ooh, that's nice. Now, something that's interesting about this song is, whereas the other songs were a little more repetitive in their chord progression, Chris Martin does mix things up a bit. So let's fill in the minor 5. So we have minor 5, lowercase v's for the minor 5. And then, and so that's what we're looking at here, is the verse and chorus are in that mode. But then look at this. The bridge gets into a different kind of area of the circle of fifths, which again, you can tell just from the chords. But let's look closer at what is going on here. So we have an F major chord, an F sharp major chord, a C sharp major chord, and also an G sharp major chord. So it is let's see. Oh, sorry. Lands on that F sharp chord, and stays there for a while, and then it kicks back into the chord progression of. So what is up with this progression of? It's actually, I called it F sharp major, but we'll refer to it by its enharmonic name of flat. So G flat major. So the G flat major to a D flat major to an A flat major. Well, since we have the circle of fifths here, we're going to refer to the chord map, and we've already established that the verse and the chorus is in the Mixolydian mode, E flat Mixolydian, but then we start playing this chord, G flat major, and then D flat major and A flat major. Now, the tonic, the song ultimately resolves back to and comes back to that E flat major. So what we have going on here is a shift in this bridge section of Coldplay's Clocks, and we're playing these 3 chords in a clockwise circle of fifths motion: a flat major 3, a flat major 7, and a major 4. So 3 major chords, because it's in this inner ring. And basically what that is we just shifted into Dorian. So Chris Martin is hanging out in Mixolydian for the verse and the chorus sections, and then for that bridge section, he's like, "Ooh, I'm just going to shift it over a notch into Dorian," and it has a quintessentially Dorian sound, which is a G flat major 3. So it has kind of it sounds very consonant because those 3 chords are neighbors in the circle of fifths. But because they're outside of the range of Mixolydian, they add some harmonic variety. We've literally explored a different territory, more harmonic territory, by literally moving outside the range that we started in. And then it hangs out on that flat major 3, and then it comes back into the. Oh, whoops. So it ultimately comes back to Mixolydian by resolving back to that major 1 again. And notice that by shifting modes, the numeral stayed in place. In Dorian proper, E flat minor is the tonic. It's a minor 1, but we never actually played in E flat minor. We were just hanging out with these major chords in Dorian before coming back home to Mixolydian. So it's kind of an interesting example of mixing modes. It's modal mixture, and partly why Coldplay is so awesome, because they do have a tendency to cycle through chords and repeat a tight loop, which is very popular these days, these decades really now. But there is some more harmonic variety, some more interest going on with this bridge section, which I label here with the flat major 3, flat major 7, and major 4. So kudos to Coldplay for mixing it up, keeping things interesting. But now we're kind of moving around the chord map in the circle of fifths, where we started with Ionian, a major key, with 1979. We delved into the world of Mixolydian with Lynyrd Skynyrd's Sweet Home Alabama, and also with Clocks by Coldplay. But now Clocks also incorporates yet another mode. So we had Ionian, Mixolydian, and Clocks delved into Dorian. So let's look at our next song, which is a classic. And it's actually, it's a very popular chord progression. And it's a really great take on this chord progression by a band called the Cranberries. So this song was released in, let me know if you know when Zombie was released, what year that was. It's got a good sound to it. So let's play through it, and let's look at the chord progression first. And we're going to do our trick of identifying the tonic, and then from there we're going to identify the mode, because it is interesting to find out not just the key, but also the mode, because the mode affects the mood. So let's play this progression. So it's an E minor chord. E minor to C major to G major to D major. E minor to C major to G major to D major. I wish I could do the vocals that Cranberries could do, which sounds awesome. But I'm just going to kind of stick to a basic melody there. And we have E minor, C major, G major, D major. So let's play the loop and see which chord sounds like the resolution. We're going to we'll end on G here. Maybe it could end on G, but it almost sounds a little bit too happy. So let's cycle again and see. Let's end on D and see how that sounds. E minor to C to G to D. That sounds weird. It doesn't sound like it wants to end there, so we'll end on C. And sounds like the song could, if it was like a live performance of the song where they're like, ooh, that's unexpected. Again, if it's unexpected, it's not really the tonic. So we can rule that one out. And that leaves us with E minor as the tonic. Let's cycle back around. So C, G major, to D, to E minor. Yeah, that E minor chord has the appropriately kind of dark sound that this song has. And it really is the tonic in this case. It's E minor is a minor 1 in this case. So now instead of a major 1 or a major tonic, we have a minor 1. So let's turn to the chord map to first get our bearings with the key. So we're going to align the E minor with the minor 1. So we're going to take E minor over here. We're going to rotate it over. I'm going to just move the grouping out of the way so it's not a distraction quite yet. And let's get into the other chords that we have. So E minor is the minor 1. Then we have C major, flat major 7, it looks like. G major, a flat major 3, and D, a flat major 7. So if we take the grouping and just group those together, all of those fit within Aeolian. So we have E, Aeolian, a minor 1, a flat major 6, a flat major 7, or a flat major 3, and a flat major 7. So this chord progression is really popular. And actually, I think it was one of the chord progressions that we talked about in a recent live stream, because in Aeolian, a minor 1, a flat major 6, a flat major 3, and a flat major 7 is really popular. Now, because it just sounds so good. It also, notice how even though the minor chord of E minor is the tonic, the point of resolution, so it gives it that kind of dark, melancholy sound. And the song is about the evils and terror of war, about some bombings that happened in Ireland. The Cranberries are from that area, and so they were singing about war. So if you're going to sing about war, the Aeolian mode, or this minor key, is a great sonic palette to work with because it's going to help reinforce the message of your song. And in this case, E minor is the tonic, but notice how all of the other chords in the song are major. So they all have relatively bright sounding chords, except by resolving to that minor one, it helps to, again, reinforce that darker sound of the song. So it's E minor, C, flat major 6, G, flat major 3, D, flat major 7. Beautiful. Such a great song. And did anyone say this is 1994 is when Zombie came out? So just a year before Smashing Pumpkins. So mid 90s, some really good songs. Okay, so that is another song. We have one more that we're going to look at here, and it is a song. So we're going to go back. There's the chord progression. Like I say, I'm going to be adding these to the library, so they're in the post, the heads-up post for this. Garden Party by Rick Nelson. So we're going from the war-torn streets of Ireland now to a garden party in the U.S. in 1972 is when the song came out. Ricky Nelson. Actually, this is a really good song. If you don't know this song, definitely check it out. It's got a really beautiful chord progression. But as you can see, because it's not from the mid-70s on, it has not just a tight loop of repeating chords. There's a lot more harmonic variety going on here. So it seems like, at first glance, this might be overwhelming. It might be a difficult challenge to figure out the key and the mode and why these chords are used. But we're going to cut through it like a knife through hot butter with using music theory. So the chord progression is... So that's a D major to a G major, a D major, G major, D, A, B minor, D, G, A, D. Ooh, that's a nice progression. And then the second half of that is similar. It's almost identical, actually, except for this E minor chord. Oh, see if I can figure out how to use this device. There we go. This E minor chord is the only difference. In this case, we had a G, and then we go to an E minor chord. And we'll see why that is here. So I'm going to play this second half, starting with D. When you go to these diagrams in the library, you won't have to wait for me to figure out my iPad here. You can just play it at your own pace. So it's D, minor, D, E minor, A, D. So it's beautiful. And let's see, do I already identify it? Okay, so let's look at this. You're starting to get the feel for how to identify the tonic. So there are a lot of chords here, and there's some more likely candidates. You might already have a feel for what the tonic is, but it's... If we ended on G, the song wouldn't sound finished. So let's come back to the D. So it's not G. D, A, B minor, D, G, A, D. Oh, that D sounds awfully resolute. And then the chord progression, again, ends on that D. So we've got a D standing out as a very likely candidate for the tonic. And in this case, it is the tonic. Because you could end the song right there. Ricky Nelson could drop the mic, walk off stage, and everyone would be like, that was amazing. because it's the tonic. It sounds amazing. So with that in mind, let's look at the chord map and see what these chords are and how they fit within D. So I'm going to rotate the grouping out of the way so it's not a distraction. I'm going to rotate this major 1 because D major is a major 1 in this case. And let's take our grouping around the chords that are included and see if they point to a given mode. So D major is included. Also G major. You also have A major and B minor. And there's also an E minor. So if we take our grouping and go around those, boom, we have D Ionian, the chords of 1, 4, 5, a 6, and a minor 2. And it makes sense because when you hear this song, and he's also singing about a garden party, and there's not real irony there. So it's a garden party. Like you kind of would think it's a major key. Now, if you listen to the lyrics, it's actually like a totally elaborate, veiled, I don't know if you call it allegory or metaphor. He uses a lot of code names for people at this party. Basically, the story is Rick Nelson performed at Madison Square Garden. That's the garden that he's referring to. And there was a party there, meaning he was like a heartthrob in the 50s. And so in 1972, he comes out with this awesome song, and people went to the concert. He had long hair. His band was filled with hippies, and he was like going for like a country music sound, which people did not expect. People didn't want a change like that. So I think he was even booed. Maybe he left the stage. I can't remember. But he basically, the theme of the song is you can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself, which is a really cool message and totally true. So this song, at least the verse and the chorus, or at least the verse section, is in that D Ionian. Let's go to the chorus section, because the chorus section is where he sings about you just got to please yourself. And let's look at this chord progression and see if anything changes, because Chris Martin just taught us that you can change modes midway through a song. So let's see what goes on with the chorus. So it's all right now, then I listen well. Beautiful. And you can see that it's all the same chords. So he actually didn't switch things up on us. Rick Nelson stuck with the key of D Ionian because it is such a beautiful melody and such a uplifting sound. So he's, you know what, I'm just gonna stick with it because it's such a great progression, such a great key, such a great mode. So 5 songs. We looked at 5 songs. 1979, the Smashing Pumpkins, and it's not just Smashing Pumpkins, it's the Smashing Pumpkins. I think if you add a "the" to your band's name, you're fully legit. And then you have Sweet Home Alabama by Lynyrd Skynyrd. That's in Mixolydian. Clocks by Coldplay, Mixolydian and Dorian. So bonus points for Coldplay for mixing it up with some modal mixture. And then you have Zombie by Cranberries with that classic Aeolian progression of a minor 1, a flat major 6, flat major 3, flat major 7. It's like a classic Aeolian mode. And Aeolian, like a million songs are written with that progression, but Zombie is one of the best. It's like they caught the vibe of that and just took it all the way. And then Garden Party by Rick Nelson, which is in Ionian. Great song in a great mode. So let's geek out a bit, shall we? And talk through, and if anyone has a favorite song out of this group. I know it's kind of an eclectic mix, but that's the thing is all of these songwriters from different corners of the earth, all are speaking the same language, which is the language of music. Quant Major, it's cool to have you on. So how do I combine intervals and the circle? I was learning chords through intervals, but now I'm unable to learn the circle simultaneously. Okay, so let me set this down. Now, something that's helpful with, let me keep your comment there, your question on the screen while I pull up the chord map. Now, something to keep in mind with the circle of fifths is it's just built on intervals at the atomic level. What do I mean by that? So you have notes in the chromatic scale. Okay, so let me just pull this up. Just zoom in a little bit, and the notes in the chromatic scale just rise in half step intervals. From one octave to the next, and notice how in this example, the thing about the colors and the shapes that I'm using here is that the colors show harmonic relationships. I know my camera is a little bit askew, but don't be distracted by that. Although after I say that, I have to adjust the camera. So the colors show harmonically related notes. Like, for example, C and G are harmonically related. D and G are harmonically related as well. The shapes also highlight the intervals in that all of the squares are separated by whole steps, and all of the circles are separated by whole steps as well. And really, when you get down to it, music is all about the intervals. So what the colors and the shapes show are not only harmonically related notes based on which notes are compatible with each other, but also the intervals between them based on the shape. So the shapes and the colors pack a 1-2 punch to convey the intervals between notes. Now, the intervals, you use intervals to play scales and also chords. So in the chromatic scale, it's just square, circle, square, circle, square, circle, square, circle, because everything is a half step apart, right? So you're going to alternate between squares and circles. This is like a super high level, fast explanation. But then you use different combinations of whole steps and half steps to create patterns like the major scale. So in this case, C major is a whole step, so it's 2 squares, another whole step, it's another square, and then a half step, so from square to circle, and then whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So using those squares and circles show you the intervals in that pattern, but also the colors highlight chords that are harmonically related. And so you can use intervals like major scales to then form other structures, other patterns, like the circle of fifths. I talk about the circle of fifths in other videos, but basically the circle of fifths is a daisy chain pattern of major scales that bleed seamlessly into each other and cycle through a complete loop of all 12 keys. So once we have the circle of fifths based on major scales built from major scales that overlap, we then have harmonically related chords that are neighbors, and then you can just bounce between them because they all stem from the same source patterns. So that, I don't know that clarified anything like definitively, but it is at least explaining that you're on the right track to learn intervals to play chords. A lot of times people are tempted just to let me just find the notes or the finger positions to play and just play a chord, but they don't know why they're playing those particular notes. So like on the fretboard here, I have the colors and the shapes mapping out why you're pressing your finger on a particular note, because these note combinations are harmonically related due to those underlying intervals. So, and then combined with the circle of fifths, you can start to make sense of not only where to place your fingers, but why and how to move between different chords to form chord progressions, because all of these different layers, whether it's just notes and intervals or scales or the chords built from those scales or the chord progressions built from those chords, they all are built upon the same structure. They follow the same patterns. So it's a long answer to a short question, but stick with intervals. The colors and the shapes can really help. They definitely help me, and they can help you wrap your head around how these patterns are formed. It's all very logical. All of these patterns build on each other. Iggy Club. Do most songwriters do this intuitively? When I write, I just play chords that sound right with how I sing the song, but I want to be able to plan the music. I think you're setting this into motion. Well, very cool. I'm glad that you're here. And yeah, so I think that the best songwriters at first builds almost like a mental database of chord chords and chord progressions where, you know, you play a C and a G, they sound really good together, and you might not know why. So you might just kind of put them together, but once you like see them in connection with each other, and you're like, oh, damn, a C and a G are related in a given key and mode. And I started with these chords, but now like I'm like, oh, I could start to incorporate those other chords and flesh out a chord progression intentionally, rather than just hunting and pecking and hoping that a chord rises to the surface. The ChordMap shows you not only how to play chords within a given key and mode, there's all sorts of cool tricks or cool patterns at play in the ChordMap in the circle of fifths that allow you to do chord substitution, secondary dominance, and it gets even more advanced from there. So yeah, this is there's a logic to all of this, and it might start out intuitively, but then you can apply that intentionally to your songwriting. It's a great question. Deja Visions, love your name. Hey, Sir Mike, could you please tell me where I can find one of those rotatable color circle? Yeah. So this ChordMap is, if you go to mycolormusic.com, then you can get a ChordMap there. And thank you, Virtuous Heretic has a link there. So the ChordMap is in the shop at mycolormusic.com. And it's super handy to be able to play. So thanks for your question. I'm glad you're here geeking out with us about music theory. Music theory is way cooler than just, you know, looking at a diagram of traditional notation and key signatures. Hyperinject. Okay, so awesome. I have a translation here. Virtuous Heretic set me up with a translation. So let me read this and speak to your question. Okay, so how is that selector made to have that referendum to compose? I say that because I have a MIDI controller and I'm trying to learn scales. Okay, so if you're referring to the ChordMap here, so this ChordMap is a tool for composition in that it shows how all chords are related. Now, we kind of looked at how the chords are related between modes, which is like next level stuff. So for example, a lot of our songs were just in one mode, but like I say, in Clocks, it's an E flat Mixolydian. He was moving between two what are called parallel modes of E flat Mixolydian and E flat Dorian. And it has to do with the way that those chords are related in music theory. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about modes, modal mixture. I have in some of the videos, but a lot more to come on that. And it's the focus of lesson 18 in the course, which will be coming after lessons 16 and 17 drop. So definitely be checking that out, because, and much more to come. I'm going to, like I say, I'm starting to get back into produced videos, which haven't done in a minute, because, and by a minute, I mean for several months, because I was finishing part 5 of the course, lessons 16 through 20 or 19 up till this point. And then also the chord and mode books, which are going to be fun to talk about as those roll out. Let's see. Hey, Donidri, it's cool to have you on. So seems like changing modes happens when you go from a major to a minor chord. It could be, though not necessarily. So in this case, like in the case of Clocks, it's in Mixolydian, which is one of the major modes. And then it does slip into a minor mode of Dorian. Though you could have, and a lot of times, sometimes you'll have like an Ionian mode and it mixes modes with Aeolian way over here. And that's a common modal mixture, but you could go from like just Ionian, like Hey Jude by the Beatles goes from, it's not in E flat, it's not in the key B flat, but it is Ionian, and it slips between Ionian and Mixolydian. So it stays between two major modes. And so there's different types of modal mixture, but yeah, there are, that'd be a good one to do, actually, talk about different types of modal mixture between modes. So I'll look at doing something on that. It's a great question. So that is circle of fifths use in songwriting with a handful of examples. 5 songs is only a minor drop in the bucket compared to the ocean of music that's out there. But hopefully this gives you at least a sense of different types of songs and how they all make sense when you look at them through the lens of music theory. So thank you for being on Geeking Out. And I will be giving a heads up as the next produced video is coming out so that you can be on the lookout for that. So have a great rest of your evening, night, morning, day, wherever you might be, and we will talk soon. I'll see you. Bye.